everyone. Since the dawn of time, nature has surprised people with its power and beauty. Thousands of years passed before people could find an explanation for phenomena such as rainbows, storms, or fog. But even if you think you have a good understanding of physics and have seen it all, nature still has things that will surprise you. Colorful rivers, floating lakes, rays coming from the ground. This is not the result of good video editing, but actual footage from different parts of the world. Want to know more? Then keep watching, because today we'll tell you about the most unusual natural phenomena on the planet. Let's get it on. Rainbow River. At first glance, this water flow, located in the central part of the Latin American country of Colombia, is no different from any other. But every year between the rainy season and the dry season, its waters are painted with all the colors of the rainbow. This explosion of colors can be observed for several weeks, usually between July and October, and it appears due to the endemic algae that live at the bottom of the reservoir. And that is why the locals call it Caño Cristalis, or the River of Five Colors. In addition, the river bottom has an extremely complex structure, covered with natural basins, depressions, and shallow waterfalls. All this resembles the traces left by some ancient creature and only highlights the incredible beauty of this place. By the way, the river was closed to visitors until 2009, but today, this natural wonder is finally available to the general public. However, we must not forget that you can visit it only accompanied by a licensed guide. You're even allowed to swim in the unusual river. However, you will have to refrain from using any kind of sunscreen, as it negatively affects the endemic plants that grow in the river and are the reason of its beautiful color. Ground-to-cloud lightning. This incredible lightning, similar to a branched tree that extends to the sky, was first discovered in the 1930s. However, it was only possible to capture it in photo and video in 2001. When researchers scanned the sky with special cameras at the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, these images deeply impressed the physicists, who were not able to immediately understand how this rare phenomenon works. They used to think that lightning only strikes from the sky, but it turned out that in some cases it releases its electric discharge in the opposite direction. First, let's see how lightning works. Here it is. During bad weather, at the bottom of a storm cloud, negative electrical charges accumulate. When the amount of lightning clouds exceeds a certain threshold, it moves to the top of the cloud and interacts with positively charged particles, or it's released and moves to Earth. But what happens when a lightning bolt comes out of the ground? There are several theories about this phenomenon, but most scientists say the reason is the reciprocal discharge emitted by charged particles on Earth. It is they who, under certain conditions, strike the cloud again. By the way, lightning rods are based on the same principle. Glowing mushrooms. You probably know that some living organisms can emit light. For example, this property is characteristic of deep-sea fish to attract prey. However, these characteristics can also be found in other organisms, such as fungi. By the way, this was already mentioned in the works of the Greek philosopher Aristotle. What is the nature of glowing fungi, though? Scientifically speaking, this unusual property is caused by a chemical reaction involving oxygen and luciferin, a biological pigment that emits light. This reaction causes some fungal tissues to begin to glow with mysterious greenish light. The idea is that the glow of the mushrooms, on the contrary, warns animals of their poisonous nature. Steve. For centuries, people have been accustomed to the aurora borealis. The ancient Vikings believed that this was the reflection of the swords of the Valkyries, which carry the soldiers to Valhalla, which is a paradise equivalent in German Scandinavian mythology. And in the Middle Ages, it was believed that polar lights were a harbinger of epidemics and wars. The first scientist to try to explain the essence of this natural phenomenon was the Russian researcher Mikhail Lomonosov. It was then that it became known that, in fact, the aurora borealis has an electrical nature. It arises from charged particles of the solar wind, which fall into the Earth's magnetic field. However, it turned out that this is not the only kind of aurora borealis. In 2016, researchers discovered a new species known as Steve. This phenomenon appears at high altitudes in the sky at the time of observations of usual polar flights. It's a vertical violet strip that stands out against the green background of the rest of the aurora. At first, scientists believed that Steve's nature was similar to that of the polar lights, and that it was a type of aurora borealis. To their surprise, they discovered that Steve's appearance was completely different and had nothing to do with the movement of solar wind particles. This is why it's now considered to be a completely new natural phenomenon that has not yet been fully explored. Well, for now, you can just enjoy it. Hole punch cloud. If you thought that the only clouds in nature are the round, spongy clouds normally studied in geography classes, you were wrong. Yes, of course they are the most common, but sometimes in the sky you can find real wonders. One of the most unusual types of clouds in nature is known as the hole punch cloud. Its shape is original in itself. Not in vain did the first eyewitnesses to this phenomenon take it as a UFO, and this phenomenon is sometimes accompanied by a rainbow. But what is the nature of its appearance? Well, it's very simple. These clouds are formed when a certain part of a large cloud, made up of particles of supercooled but not yet frozen water, literally falls, giving in to the force of gravity. This is usually the result of localized precipitation, but it's also sometimes due to the effect of planes whose engines change the ambient temperature during flight. Wave rock. As difficult as it may be to believe, this unusual rock, more than 100 meters long, is not the result of human labor. In fact, its surprising slopes, similar to the crest of a wave, appeared as a result of centuries of erosion, and nature had more than enough time, because this rock is considered one of the oldest on Earth. The stone wave is located near the Australian city of Hayden. Since Australia is one of the favorite places for surfers from all over the world, this unusual phenomenon of nature becomes even more meaningful. Flying river. You probably know that the Amazon is the world's largest river. It also competes with the Nile for the title of the longest navigable waterway on the planet. Most of its basin belongs to Brazil and is also shared by countries such as Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia. This river contains a great number of mysteries, and one of them is the so-called flying rivers. Researchers studying the Amazon have often noticed that the sky above its basin is always dotted with large rain clouds. They appear there for a reason. It's nothing more than the waters of the river itself, which then overflow over the Amazon rainforests in the form of rain, feeding the local plants and trees. It is this phenomenon that is known as the flying river. This process is incredibly important for the entire ecosystem of the planet, but today it's threatened by forest fires, of 460 by 160 meters with so many of these creatures come from? Have they been bred here specifically to attract tourists? Of course not. This body of water separated from the Pacific Ocean more than 10,000 years ago, so it turned out that except for the jellyfish, there was no one in it, and due to the lack of natural enemies, they began to multiply uncontrollably, and later lost their defensive mechanisms. That's why you can visit this place without fear of being stung, and the photos of the lake will surprise all your friends for its originality. Butterfly forest. You may not know it, but butterflies, like birds, often spend cold months in distant lands, migrating to warmer countries. For example, the world's most massive insect migration is considered to be the annual migration of approximately 1 billion butterflies from the United States and Canada to the Mexican state of Michoacan. This is no less than 4,500 kilometers. By the way, specialists have always been surprised at the precision with which this species of insects navigates in space during these long migrations. It turns out that the Earth's magnetic pole and a kind of compass integrated into their body helps them to do so.